is Friday afternoon, and what a better time, no better time to talk beer. Sue Rigler here on Brew TV in San Diego, California at Green Flash Brewery. I'm standing here with head brewer Kevin Barnes, and Kevin and I are going to talk today. They have a new canning line we're going to take a look at a little bit later. We're going to talk hops, their hoppy beer at Green Flash. And Kevin and I met a few months ago when he was giving myself and other students at UCSD Brewing School a tour of the Green Flash Brewery, which we are standing in the midst of. And Kevin had a great story, so I just asked him if he'd come online and share his story with the brewers. So on that note, Kevin, thank you very much for being here.
My pleasure.
And if you can tell that how you got hired here and your entry into the brewing world.
Sure. My story is a little different from most, maybe, but I studied English in college and quickly realized that I did not want to pursue a career in that field. I didn't want to go back to school for graduate school or get a teaching credential, and so I didn't really know what I wanted to end up doing. Ended up doing aid work in Africa for a year. While I was there, the beer was so horrible. I thought someone needs to learn how to make really good beer and create a business here in Uganda based off of that. And then I realized, well, maybe I could be the one to learn how to make beer. So I moved to San Diego for that purpose. I knew there were a lot of great breweries in San Diego. And so I came down here and I went to every single brewery in the county. This was back in 2008, so there's a lot fewer back then. But me being an outsider, not really knowing the industry or the culture, I showed up with a little collared polo shirt, trying to look professional, asking for HR departments at every brewery. Now, 90% of them were like, HR? What? There's just a guy, in boots making beer here. So, but eventually I had the very good fortune of landing a position at Green Flash. And so I started at Green Flash 7.5 years ago, washing kegs, manual labor on the bottling line, and been able to work my way up to head brewer here. So
that's a great story. So what kind of advice would you give those that want to enter into the brewing world, maybe that don't have experience? How do you get to a Green Flash?
At this point, I would say education would be the number one thing. There's so many people wanting to get into the industry now that education is your first step to getting a good job, a good career started. So I'm actually an alumni of the program that I met Sue through at UCSD's Extension, the brewing course, and that allowed me to really make a lot of progress in my own career at Green Flash. And so we generally are trying to hire people that are going through that program or a similar one. So that's definitely step number one.
That is a phenomenal program. I'm 2 years into it, and I have a couple electives and my internship left. So maybe I'll hit you up for an internship.
Yeah.
So Green Flash, known for their super hoppy beers. Let's talk hops. Okay? Now, give me some idea of kind of your product line. It was out in the sampling board as we walked in. There's probably 30 beers up there. So kind of go over maybe your flagship beers and what type of hops are in them.
Yeah, so our flagship beer is West Coast IPA. We've been making that since before I started here. And really we bank on, we're definitely banking on hoppy beers, like you said. We use a ton of Pacific Northwest, Yakima Valley grown, and Willamette Valley in Oregon grown hops. We use, in West Coast IPA, we use Cascade, Centennial, CTZ, Simcoe, and Citra. So I'm trying to be louder here. That's we also, you may or may not know, we also own Alpine Beer Company. So their flagship beer has become Duet, and that one uses Simcoe and Amarillo exclusively. It's 2-hop beer, and that's quickly become their flagship beer. And we're known for our piney, citrusy fruity flavors that we get from using tons of hops.
So, 2 hops in a beer. What's the most hops you've ever put in a beer?
The most hops we've ever put in a beer would probably max out at about 6 different varieties. I think Alpine Hoppy Birthday uses that many.
6.
Yeah.
Wow.
That one we use hops from the Pacific Northwest and hops from New Zealand. Alpine really helped start the interest in using New Zealand-grown hop varieties in making American IPAs. They're pretty, they're front runners in that. So
nice. Is that where Nelson is from?
Absolutely. Nelson and Southern Cross, both. Those are the 2 hops used to make Nelson IPA. They're both grown in New Zealand.
Great. Thank you, New Zealand, for your great hops. So let's, what do we have back here? There's some hops here. Let's give our viewers a little bit of education about how to, when you go to the hop farms during harvest and kind of you smell them and look at them and kind of how do you pick hops out?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You look at them, you pick them off the vine, you rub them, you smell them, and when they're growing, they look like this. I don't know if you can see on that camera, but this is what brewers get to sample when they go to the hop fields. So the hop growers will cut a little square out of their big bale of whole cone hops. This is dried out, just fresh hops. And so we get to, as brewers get a brewer's cut, we get to crush them up, smell them. We make a giant mess. It's a lot of fun. And we get to smell all the different lots of the same variety of hop. And we get to pick the one we like the best. So it's pretty awesome. Now, from here, you can make tons of different types of products of hops. The most widely used one would be pellets. So some brewers like Sierra Nevada, they use almost exclusively whole leaf hops like this. We use them to make casks, and we also use them in Alpine's Pure Hoppiness. But otherwise, we're using almost exclusively the hops in the pelletized form. So that's what these are. There's a lot of advantages to using pellets. The storage ability is a lot greater. They stay fresh longer. They're also just easier to handle. Most modern brewing equipment is designed to use pellets. So it's also very helpful in deciding what type of hops you want to use to smell crush the pellets, because most of the time this is the form you're going to be using anyways. There are a couple other types. One of them is a CO2 extract, and that basically is for bittering. So we use it in some of our beers to add a really clean, crisp bitterness. It comes in these big cans. A couple other newer developments are, one is called hop oil, and that's just distilled essential oils from hops. Very interesting kind of cutting-edge technology. May have had Sierra Nevada's Hop Hunter uses distilled oils. And then the newest one that I'm aware of is called lupulin powder. And I don't know if you can get a shot of this, but it's just a powderized form. So it's a little bit more of a pure essence of the alpha acids and the oils that are present in the hops, and you get rid of a lot of the actual plant matter, and so you get much more clean, less vegetal, less grassy aromas and flavors from using this stuff, because it gets rid of all that extra plant matter. So
I'd like to smell that.
Yeah.
That smell never gets old.
Right? Yeah, hops are one of the best smells on earth.
How do they make that?
These are called cryo powder. So it's this new technique where they actually freeze the whole leaf hops, and then they're able to use a machine to separate all the oils from the plant matter. So it's very, very new. They just developed it last year, so it's a new thing. Brewers are loving it.
Great. That's very, very interesting. Thank you for that education here on the hops. You mentioned the IPA and double IPAs, triple IPAs. Can you please go over the difference between them?
Yeah, really good question. So I did forget to mention our flagship beer is actually a double IPA, whereas Alpine's flagship beer is a single IPA. The difference being mainly the alcohol content. Generally, a single IPA is going to be anywhere from 6 to 7.5 ABV. Double IPA would be more like 8 to 9.5. And a triple IPA would be 10 plus ABV. Now, along with that extra alcohol, you've got to use extra grain to get the extra sugar to make the extra alcohol. So often, you got to use extra hops to make it have that balance that IPAs have, where you get more hops than malt or sweetness. So double and triple IPAs also have more kettle hops, more bitterness, and often more dry hops to make those hops stand out above all that extra malt that's in there. So that would be the main difference. Every brewery does things differently. Some breweries might make a triple IPA that's only or mostly dry hops. We have a beer called Palate Wrecker that is true to its name. It's got 130 plus bittering units. It's very, very kettle hop centric, but we also do a giant dry hop on it. So it's nice and balanced. Hops just everywhere. Lots of bitterness.
So 130 IBU, international bittering units.
Yep.
So the higher the number, the more bitter the beer is. Yep. At what point does your palate get ruined or wrecked? Palate wrecker.
Great question. They say that you can't really distinguish the difference after 100 IBUs on your recipe calculator. I kind of beg to differ after tasting Palate Wrecker, because it really is just it's really one of the most potent beers maybe that there is. So
maybe we'll have to have one of those after this. So one other question I had was the West Coast IPA is your flagship. What is the difference between a West Coast IPA and an East Coast IPA?
Excellent question with a pretty complicated answer. If you had asked this 2 years ago, I would have said, well, a West Coast IPA is hugely hopped, lots of bitterness. Well, that's still true. I would have said an East Coast IPA would be a lot less hoppy, more malty, maybe even darker, a little bit more crystal, caramel, sweet malt flavor. But that was 2 years ago. Now with the rise of Heady Topper and all of the other breweries making IPAs differently out there these days, there's a new meaning to East Coast IPA, which would be a very hazy, low bitterness, high fruity hop aroma and flavor, which is kind of sweeping the nation. Everybody in San Diego is now coming out with these. They're calling East Coast IPAs,
and they're really, really hazy. Correct.
Yeah. So I don't know if that. I hear that was not the intention when these beers were first created. It was just kind of how it happened, and all of the customers, they equated the degree of hoppiness that you get in those beers with that haziness. So that's how people continue to make them. I don't know the real truth behind it. Maybe they did intend them to be super hazy. Maybe not. All I know is they're making good beer. So
very good. So on that note, hazy, let's talk about filtration. Sure. And let's walk down the little hallway here. And how's the sound? We okay? All right. Maybe our viewers can comment how the sound is. It's a little loud up above, so follow along, and we're going to go. We're walking here. You can see, can you take a look at, is this your pilot system?
This is our pilot system. Absolutely. These guys are about to make a mule cocktail inspired beer called Copper Cup. It's going to be aged in bourbon barrels.
Nice. When will that be ready?
Probably not for a year. It's going to be in the barrel for a while.
Well, I'll have to come back I'll come back before a year, but we'll check on it in a year. So, David, our cameraman, if you can pan over here, and these are the fermenters.
Yeah, so over here is our 100-barrel fermenters. We do small-ish batches. Our brew house is 50 barrels, so we can do 2 batches to fill these guys. Over here, next to them are our tiny guys, where we ferment our pilot batches, and we do R&D beers. We also let the employees have a contest every other month. It's called the Genius Lab program, and the winner, everybody can submit a recipe. The winner gets to brew their beer. And that's what they're doing right now. Niall is one of our brewers, and he is making a beer with Pat Korn, our barrel master, that he won the contest for Genius Lab to do a barrel-aged pilot brew. So
Very nice. You guys, David, you want to get the guys on camera? Oh, they're busy here. Hi, you guys. You're on camera. Brew TV. So we'll check back in a year when that's ready. Okay? Good luck with that. So as we make...
we got Aaron, one of our assistant brewers, part of the team here too, handing up the buckets of malt so they can mash in. Behind, I don't know if you got a shot of the big fermenters, but those are 250 barrels. So we have to brew 5 batches in order to fill one of those guys up. And we have 22 of them here.
Oh, my gosh.
A lot of capacity.
Amazing. 100 barrels, you say, is small, huh? Compared dwarf down to small-ish. So as we make our way down to the centrifuge and talk filtration.
So that would be another differences between West Coast and East Coast style beers. At least it's a recent development, but West Coast style beers tend to be more bright, more filtered, cleaner tasting, less yeast, less of the hazy kind of look and feel. So
is that when it's hazy? Is that what you're kind of seeing, if you will? Is yeast in there, and what other particles?
Yeah, yeast and hops give a lot of haze off too. So one of the things that filtration does is get rid of that haze that comes from the hop, and you still get the flavor and aroma, but it just looks a little bit different. So
let's take a look at the centrifuge. Stay right there. You're good.
This is kind of a cool shot because we actually have our old diatomaceous earth filter next to our centrifuge, which our centrifuge we're able to replace the DE filter. So that was a much more labor-intensive, difficult, time-consuming way to clarify beer. The greatest thing about the centrifuge is how easy and how easy it is to use, and how fast you can get beer bright from it. It actually allows us to shave off a couple of days of residence time in our fermenters using the centrifuge.
So that saves money.
It saves money.
Gets that beer out there faster to the market, and you can make more beer.
Yep.
Okay, so the centrifuge actually, I would imagine it probably pays for itself over time.
Absolutely pays for itself over time. It also gives you a much better degree of control over the level of clarity or haziness in your beer. So we can use it to make hazy beer if we want, or we can use it to make really bright beer. So it's a lot more versatile. Whereas the DE filter, you're either going to be bright or you're going to be, unfiltered.
I've heard horror stories about those. Yes.
Yeah, they're hard to work with. They're not brewer friendly. Yeah.
So a centrifuge, just to kind of let our viewers know, it just spins the beer down at extremely high gravity. So all the sediment, it pellets out in the bottom, and then you have clean beer on the top.
Absolutely, yeah. The thing spins at 5,426 RPMs, I want to say. So it's pretty wild.
And it's bolted down. David, if you can get a shot here of the centrifuge, it is securely bolted down to the ground because if that thing would take off.
You can also get a shot of our QA, QC, and house model, Ron Angelo, right there.
What's his name?
Ron Angelo. So this little guy here is the DE filter. That's what we replaced with the centrifuge. The big guy behind, it's kind of hard to get a shot of it. You might have to come all the way over here. Yeah, that big bowl looking, that is the centrifuge right there. And then after the centrifuge, we can choose to either put the beer through these pads here in the sheet filter, or just completely bypass it and do centrifuge only. So we do all kinds of variations. Some of the beers get 100% through the pads. Some of them get only a small percentage through the pads, and some don't go through the pads at all.
So the whole filtration process in finishing practices, I just got finished with finishing practices, is amazing. And I mean, I could see coming back and just having a whole segment on filtration and how to get clean beer. So, all right, now we are going to go to the canning line. And Green Flash, it is a new piece of equipment here at Green Flash Brewery. So we're going to go take a peek at it.
Got it? Yeah, so we just, here, I'll take this as we walk. We just installed this new canning line in November of last year. So we've probably run it about a dozen times. We don't can every day. Canning's new for us, so we're just kind of getting started. We bottle almost every single day and keg. We do keg every single day, but we only can every once in a while. So we're still kind of getting used to it, but it's a very cool machine. It's a great package to put beer in. We love drinking beer out of the can. It's kind of loud over here, so bear with me. But the cans allow you to take the beer a lot more places. Take it out to the park. Take it to the beach. It also is a lighter weight, so it's easier to transport, and you don't have to worry about your beer getting light.
We back here? Are we back on? We lost you guys for just a little bit, but kind of we went around and saw the canning line. So I think unless you have anything else to add to our... Do we? Oh, very good question. Yes, we were. Thank you. Someone asked if there is a tap room on the East Coast. So let's talk about the locations.
Great question. Thank you for asking. We just opened a brand new facility in Virginia Beach, in Virginia, which has the same, basically the same brew house, the same fermenters, and a very similar tasting room as we have here in San Diego at our original brewery. Only difference is it has a massive beer garden also. So it's very similar here. They make all the same beers there that we make here. We serve all the same beers there, and it's a brand new, beautiful facility. So
Road trip. And any tips that you can give our viewers, brewing tips for home brewers to just one last kind of, if you can add anything or that.
Home brewers, I want to say thank you. Your ability to innovate and take risks at home on a small scale is helpful to the industry at large. So we get a lot of our inspiration from you guys. So keep up the good work. I would say one thing, if you are enjoy kind of seeing the behind the scenes of the brewery here on the video. We do have public brewery tours Tuesday through Sunday at both locations here in San Diego and Virginia. We actually have a barrel aging facility also called Cellar 3 in Poway that we also do tours there. So come on by. We'd love to show you around and have some beer with you.
Great. Well, thank you very much for your time. And, one other question. Where can they find your beer besides everywhere?
Yeah, that's a tough question to answer because we are almost everywhere. We're in all 50 states. We're in Western Europe. We're in other countries. Mainly wherever you can find good beer, we should be available there. We're in all 50 states. So.
Great. Well, thank you again, Kevin. Cheers. Salud. And to our viewers, thank you very much for tuning in. Tapping out right now, Sue Rigler, Brew TV at Green Flash Brewery.